MySQL has a number of useful numeric functions, and we're going to talk about those in a moment. But first, I want to talk about numbers a little bit. Select 320. So 320 here is a literal number, and when I press go, you'll see the result is 320. You can also get numbers from a database. So this will select the duration column from the track table in the album database. So there we have a bunch of numbers, and those come from a database. So for our demonstrations here, we'll be using mostly literal numbers. We will also use some numbers from a database. So let's start with this 320 number. And let's say I want to know how many minutes there are in 320 seconds. I could just divide by 60. And I see that there's 5 minutes and change. Now, what if I'm not interested in the change? I just want to know the whole minutes. So I can use div instead of the slash operator. And this is actually a function call. 320 div 60, and that'll give me 5. So there's 5 minutes, and we're not worried about the change here. If we're worried about the change, we can just say mod instead of div, and that will give us the modulus, which is the remainder of a division. And that'll tell us that there's 20 seconds after the 5 minutes are taken away. And this is really useful. As an example from the CRUD application, do something like this. And this will give us all of those durations from the track table in the album database formatted as minutes and seconds. So if we look at this, and when we nest functions like this, we want to look from the inside out. We use lpad to format this function. So this is the function here, duration mod 60. That gives us the remainder. It gives us the number of seconds after the minutes are taken away. I want to format that to be 2 characters long and padded with zeros on the left. And so the lpad function does that. And that's from here to there. And that is one argument to this concat ws, and we're using the colon as a separator. Concat ws is covered in our string functions section. And we're using the duration div 60, which is the number of minutes, and the padded number of seconds, padded on the left with zeros, from track. And so this will give us the minutes and the seconds, and the seconds will be padded with zeros on the left, separated by a colon. And there we have it. So 320 seconds is 5 minutes and 20 seconds. We have 544, 456. And you'll see that the numbers that have a number of seconds less than 10 are padded on the left with a 0. There's one. And there's another one. And we'll see that the numbers for the minutes are not padded, and yet then when there's more than 10 minutes, it shows that way. So this is a useful example, and this is actually how it's done in the CRUD application. We'll see that later when we look at the code of the CRUD application. There are other useful numeric functions that you'll see commonly used in MySQL, and let's pick another literal number to use for this example. Select 125. That number is in base 10, which is commonly how we use numbers in our day-to-day life. But let's say that we're a computer geek and we want to see it in base 16. You can say convert 125, 10, 16. Base 16 is also called hexadecimal. And so we're converting from base 10, which is also called decimal, into base 16. And the number in base 10 is 125, so it'll give us the result in hexadecimal. You can do the same thing converting to base 2. And you can convert the other way around as well. There are some shortcuts for some of the more common conversions. If you want to see 125 in hex, you can just say hex 125. Or if you want to see it in binary, you can say bin. That's base 2. And if you want to see it in octal, there's a shortcut for that, which is OCT, which is base 8. So those are the conversion functions. Another common numeric function that you'll see is the CRC32 function. And this does what's called a cyclic redundancy check. It's a form of a checksum. It'll come up with a unique number that represents this string. And it's CRC32, which is a common form of CRC, a common form of hashing. There's different words that are used to describe it, and you'll see it a lot. And there's the number, and it comes up in decimal by default. And if you want it in hex, which is also common, you'll see this very often, this construction here. Right. And you'll also commonly see it used from a table. Say select title and the CRC from the track table. And even though it's just a 32-bit number, you'll see these numbers are almost entirely unique for most lists of less than a few 100,000 of things. So it's often used for hashing and for indexing into data structures. So you'll see that now and then. There's also a complete set of trigonometric functions, and we're just going to look at a couple of them because we don't want to get into too much heavy math here. Like, for instance, degrees from radians. Pi is half a circle in radians, and so have the pi function inside as the argument to the degrees function, and this will give us pi in degrees, which will come out to 180 degrees. Or if you want radians from degrees, you can say radians of 180. And that'll give you 180 in radians, which is more digits of pi than I have memorized. There's, of course, many more trigonometry functions. You've got sines and cosines and arctans and things like that. There's the common formatting function. You'll see this one a lot. And what this will do is it will format this large number with 2 decimal places, and it'll put commas in between the digits in the number. And so there we have an easy to read number, and you'll see this function used a lot, and it's internationalized. So if you're using a different locale in your installation of MySQL, it'll use periods instead of the commas and commas instead of the periods if you're in Europe, or however it's set up on your computer in your internationalization localization. Another common function that you'll see is power, spelled P-O-W. So this will give us 16 squared, or if we want a larger power, 16 raised to the 8th is a big number. And the random function is also very common. It gives you a random number, and every time you call it, you get a different random number. Numbers are all less than 1. And this is actually very, very useful. For example, you can select let's say I want a random list of countries from the world database. This is a very common way to get that. So this will give us random records from a database. Every time I click on it, I get 10 different random countries. And if we want, you can seed the random number generator. This is interesting. And it'll give you the same random list every time because it's starting from the same place in its randomization. I guess a different number, it'll give you a different. But each time I click it, it's the same. So those are the most common numeric functions that you'll see in MySQL. Of course, there are a lot more of them, and if you go to the MySQL website, you can find a complete list, but these are the ones that you'll see the most common and that you'll use the most commonly.